Hello and welcome to Cheating Wife Chronicles.
I wasn't supposed to be home today. In fact, I wasn't supposed to be home for another week. That's why I didn't tell Sophia I was coming back early. I wanted to surprise her, something different from the usual phone calls and video chats we had while I was away. I pictured her reaction, the way her face would light up when she saw me standing at the door. She'd throw her arms around me, maybe even cry a little, telling me how much she missed me. That was the plan. Reality, however, had a way of twisting things in ways you never see coming. The drive home was uneventful. The airport had been a breeze for once. No delays, no lost luggage, no traffic jams. It felt like everything was aligning for my perfect surprise. My suitcase sat on the passenger seat, my phone buzzing occasionally with unread messages. I didn't check them. I wanted to be fully present when I stepped through that door. I imagined how it would feel to sleep in my own bed again, to kiss my wife after weeks of being apart. But as I turned onto our street, something felt off. Cars lined the curb in front of my house, more than usual. At first, I thought maybe Sophia had friends over. That wouldn't have been strange, except for the fact that these weren't familiar cars. Some were sleek, expensive, the kind that stood out in our modest neighborhood. Others had baby-themed decorations tied to their side mirrors, tiny blue and pink ribbons fluttering in the breeze. Then I saw it. The front yard was decorated with balloons, pink and blue, tied to the railing, swaying gently with the wind. A huge banner stretched across the porch, the words hitting me like a punch to the gut. "Welcome our little miracle." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. My first thought wasn't even suspicion. No, my brain was still trying to make sense of it. Our little miracle? Whose little miracle? The house I had left behind looked different. Not physically. The walls were still the same, the garden still trimmed the way I liked it. But the atmosphere had changed. It felt like I was walking into someone else's life. I could hear laughter spilling from inside, music, the clinking of glasses, a party for a baby. I pulled over a few houses down, just far enough that no one would see me yet. My hands felt clammy against the leather of the steering wheel, my heartbeat quickening for reasons I couldn't explain. There was no logical reason for this to unsettle me. Maybe it was just a neighbor event, and the banner was visible from our house. Maybe Sophia had planned a surprise for someone else. Maybe. I turned off the engine and stepped out. The air smelled of freshly cut grass and something sweet. Cake, probably. A celebration. For a second, I considered calling Sophia, but then I dismissed the idea. I wanted to see it for myself, to understand before I let my mind spiral into places it didn't need to go. I walked toward the house slowly, feeling like an intruder in my own life. The closer I got, the more details I noticed. Through the large living room window, I saw people everywhere. Some familiar faces, some I didn't recognize. They were smiling, drinking, celebrating. But the most striking thing was the way everything looked prepared. The decorations weren't last minute. The gifts stacked near the fireplace weren't a casual gesture. This wasn't something that had just come together overnight. This was planned. My stomach twisted. Still, I hesitated. Maybe there was an explanation, maybe. Then I noticed something else. The front door, it wasn't shut properly. It was slightly ajar, as if welcoming me inside, or daring me to step in. I took a deep breath and crossed the threshold. The moment I stepped in, the noise hit me full force. Laughter, conversations, the soft melody of background music. No one had noticed me yet, and for a brief moment, I wished it could stay that way, because I could already feel it. Something was wrong. Then I saw her, Sophia. She stood in the center of the living room, radiant, glowing. But it wasn't me she was smiling at. It was him, Jonah, my best friend, and his hands. His hands were gently placed on her swollen belly. The belly I didn't know existed. Everything inside me froze. The conversations in the room faded into background noise. My mother, standing near the kitchen, stiffened when she saw me. She knew. That realization hit me harder than anything else. They all knew. Jonah was saying something about the nursery, something about how he had been painting it himself, how he and Sophia had picked out the crib together. I felt like I was drowning. My mind struggled to keep up, to process. There was no explanation that made sense, no version of this reality where I was not the fool. Sophia turned her head slightly, mid-laugh, mid-conversation, mid-whatever this was, and then her gaze met mine. She froze. I saw the exact moment her world came crashing down, the moment she realized the lie had collapsed. Jonah, unaware, kept talking, his hands still resting protectively on her stomach. "We picked it out together last week." He was smiling like he hadn't just driven a knife straight through my chest, like he hadn't just ruined my entire life. I didn't even feel my mother grab my arm. I barely registered the way she tried to steer me toward the door. "We weren't expecting you today," she whispered urgently, as if that changed anything, as if me arriving today instead of next week somehow altered the fact that my best friend was standing in my house with his hands on my wife. I yanked my arm away, my voice dangerously low. "Talk about what?" I asked, my words slow and deliberate. "Talk about how my wife is pregnant with my best friend's child." The room fell silent. Someone turned off the music. Even the air felt still, as if it was waiting. Sophia's face had gone pale. Jonah's hands finally dropped from her belly, but it was too late. I had already seen it all. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a surprise meant for me. This was betrayal, a perfectly orchestrated, long-kept betrayal. And now everyone was just waiting to see what I would do next. Silence. That was the first thing that filled the room after my words sliced through the celebration like a knife. The laughter stopped. The clinking of glasses halted. Conversations died mid-sentence. All eyes were on me. My mother-in-law, Marissa, who had been rubbing Sophia's stomach just moments before, pulled her hand away as if it had been burned. My father, Gregory, who had been drinking quietly in the corner, wouldn't meet my eyes. And Sophia, my wife, my partner, the woman I had built a life with, stood frozen in place, her lips parted, but no words came out. Jonah's hands finally dropped from her belly. I saw him stiffen, his body language shifting from relaxed to rigid, like a man who had just been caught red-handed, because he had been. Sophia was the first to react. "Noah, please," she whispered. I can explain." Explain? She wanted to explain? Like there was an explanation in this world that could make this okay? I clenched my jaw so hard I thought my teeth might crack. My hands were fists at my sides, my breathing heavy, measured, controlled, barely. "Go on," I said, my voice disturbingly calm. "I'd love to hear it." No one spoke. The weight of my words hung in the air, pressing down on every person in that room. Jonah, who had always been quick with his words, always had a smooth answer for everything, stood there like a guilty coward. The man who had once been my closest friend now looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him whole. And my mother, oh, my mother! She was still trying to do damage control, trying to fix what couldn't be fixed. "Noah, let's step outside," she urged, her voice soft, her grip on my arm tightening. "This isn't the time." I ripped my arm from her grasp. "This isn't the time?" I repeated, my voice rising slightly. "When would have been the right time, Mom? When the baby was born? When my best friend's kids started calling me Uncle Noah?" My father shifted uncomfortably, still not looking at me. He had known. He had known, and he had said nothing. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. "You knew, didn't you?" I asked him. His silence was my answer. The rage inside me burned hotter. I turned back to Sophia. She looked like she was on the verge of tears, but I didn't care. She didn't get to cry now, when I had spent months working overseas, busting my ass, thinking I was building a future for us while she was doing this. "Tell me, Sophia," I said slowly, enunciating each word. "How long?" She swallowed hard. "Noah, please. It's not what you think." "Not what I think?" The words made something inside me snap. "So you're telling me my eyes are lying to me?" I asked, gesturing to the very obvious bump in her stomach. "You're telling me that's not his child? That this whole baby shower, the decorations, the gifts, the nursery, everything isn't exactly what it looks like?" Her lip trembled. "I didn't want you to find out this way," she whispered. I let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Oh, how considerate of you," I said. "How exactly were you planning on telling me, Sophia? After the baby was born? Or were you just going to let me keep believing we were still married while you played house with him?" I turned to Jonah, who still hadn't said a damn word. "What's the matter, Jonah?" I asked, my tone dripping with venom. "Cat got your tongue? You had a lot to say when you were screwing my wife." He flinched. Good. I wanted him to feel that sting. I wanted him to feel even an ounce of what I was feeling. "Noah, it wasn't like that." Jonah finally spoke, his voice tight, defensive. We didn't mean for this to happen." That phrase, "we didn't mean for this to happen." I almost lunged at him right there. Instead, I laughed again, a sharp, cutting laugh. Didn't mean for it to happen, I echoed, shaking my head. So what? You just tripped and fell inside her? A collective gasp sounded around the room. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Some picked up their bags, clearly wanting to leave, but too afraid to move. Good. Let them be uncomfortable. Sophia wiped at her face, tears streaming freely now. Noah, I never wanted to hurt you, she cried. I scoffed. Yeah, could have fooled me. Marissa, my mother-in-law, finally stepped in. And of course, she wasn't stepping in for me. Noah, enough, she snapped. Sophia doesn't need this stress. Stress? She was worried about Sophia's stress? A sickening wave of nausea rolled over me, the sheer irony of it making my head spin. Her stress? I repeated slowly, turning to face her. Where was this concern when I lost my baby 2 years ago? Marissa's face drained of color. Sophia sucked in a sharp breath. Jonah looked away. They all knew exactly what I was talking about. 2 years ago, I had sat in a hospital waiting room, gripping Sophia's hand while she cried, my heart breaking as we lost our child before we even had the chance to meet them. I had held her through the nights of grief, whispered reassurances that we'd get through it together, that when we were ready, we'd try again. And now she was carrying another man's child while everyone around me celebrated like it was some miracle. I felt my chest tighten. I had to get out of there. I turned to the gift table, scanning the neatly wrapped boxes until I saw one with my mother's name on it. I grabbed it, ignoring her protests, and tore it open. A small white onesie with blue details fell into my hands. She had bought a gift for my wife's affair baby, my own mother. I felt sick. I turned to her, my voice low. You got her something nice, Mom, I said. Did you keep the receipt? Sophia let out a choked sob. My mother's lip trembled. Jonah stepped forward again. Noah, please. I dropped the onesie at his feet. Enough, I said, my voice suddenly cold, emotionless. I looked around the room at all the faces, people I had once trusted, people who had sat in my home, laughed with me, eaten meals with me, all while knowing. I inhaled sharply, forcing myself to stay composed. Then I turned to Jonah. You better get a job, I told him, my voice calm, because from this moment on, you're on your own. Jonah's face paled. What do you mean? I smiled, a slow, satisfied smile. It means, Jonah, that while I was overseas, I wasn't just working, I said. I was also consulting a lawyer. Sophia stiffened. Jonah's eyes widened. I let the moment hang before I said the words that sealed his fate. I have proof of every penny I spent on this house, I said, on this marriage, on you. Then, without another word, I turned and walked out the door, let them all sit in their mess. I was done. The night air hit me like a cold slap as I stepped outside, the weight of the discovery suffocating, pressing down on my chest like a vice. My hands were shaking, and I couldn't tell if it was from rage or shock. Behind me, the celebration had turned into a stunned silence, but I knew it wouldn't last. The whispers would start soon, the justifications, the excuses, but I didn't care. I couldn't care, not after what I had just seen. I had spent the last year breaking my back overseas, working endless hours, sending every paycheck home, all for this? For my wife to betray me with the one person I trusted most? A bitter laugh escaped my lips. I should have seen the signs. Maybe I did, deep down. Maybe that's why I never told Sophia I was coming home early. Because somewhere inside me, I had suspected, but nothing could have prepared me for this. Before I could take another step toward my car, the front door swung open behind me. Noah, wait! Sophia's voice. I kept walking. She hurried down the steps, the soft thud of her flats against the pavement, barely audible over the sound of my blood pounding in my ears. Please, she begged, just talk to me. Talk? I stopped abruptly and turned around, barely restraining the storm inside me. Talk to you? I repeated, my voice dangerously calm. Like how you talked to me while you were screwing Jonah? That kind of talk? She winced, wrapping her arms around her stomach as if shielding herself from my words. Good. Let her feel just a fraction of the pain I was feeling. Noah, it wasn't like that, she whispered. I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. Oh, so what was it like, Sophia? Explain it to me, because from where I'm standing, it looks pretty damn clear. Tears welled up in her eyes. I almost felt something. Almost. But then I remembered everything. The late-night calls where she told me she missed me. The video chats where she smiled, saying she couldn't wait for me to come home. The messages where she told me she loved me. All lies. "You were gone for so long," she whispered, voice trembling. "You don't understand what it was like being alone all the time." My jaw tightened. "So that justifies it?" I asked. "That justifies betraying me with Jonah?" She shook her head quickly. "No, I mean, I didn't plan for it to happen." I felt my fingers curl into fists. "That's the same thing Jonah said." She flinched. "Good. Tell me something, Sophia," I continued, stepping closer. "When exactly did it just happen? When I was sending money for our future? When I was working night shifts so I could come home and give you the life you deserved? When I called and you told me you loved me? When—" I stopped myself, shaking my head. "Forget it. None of it matters now." Sophia's face crumpled. "It does matter." "No, Sophia," I said, voice clipped. "It doesn't, because you already made your choice." Her lip trembled. "Noah, please, I still love you." I scoffed. "Love?" I echoed, my voice dripping with disbelief. "Is that what you call this?" I gestured toward the house, the decorations, the celebration she had planned behind my back. Because from where I'm standing, this doesn't look like love. It looks like a goddamn joke. I could see her panic rising now. "I never wanted to hurt you," she insisted. I exhaled sharply, pinching the bridge of my nose. "Stop saying that." "But it's true." "No, Sophia," I cut her off, my patience snapping. "If you didn't want to hurt me, you wouldn't have done this." Tears spilled down her cheeks, cheeks that for a moment made her look like the woman I had fallen in love with, the woman I had married, the woman I had trusted. But she wasn't that woman anymore. "I can't lose you," she whispered. I stared at her for a long moment. "You already did." And with that, I turned my back on her. I had barely taken 2 steps when another voice called after me. "Noah!" "Jonah." I went rigid, my fists clenched at my sides. I turned slowly, my entire body coiled with tension. Jonah stood in the doorway, looking guilty as hell. His usual confidence, the cocky smirk he always wore, was gone. I wanted to hit him, badly. I wanted to wipe that pathetic expression off his face, make him feel even a fraction of the rage that was boiling inside me. But I didn't. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. Instead, I took a slow, measured breath. "You have 10 seconds, I said, voice eerily calm. "Say what you need to say." Jonah swallowed hard. I never wanted you to find out this way." That was his opening line. A dark chuckle escaped me. "Oh, that's rich," I said. "Not, I'm sorry. Not, I shouldn't have done it. Not, I betrayed you in the worst possible way. Just that you never wanted me to find out this way." Jonah had the decency to look ashamed. "Noah, man. Don't man me," I snapped, stepping forward until I was right in his face. "You don't get to call me that. You don't get to act like we're still friends. You lost that right the moment you put your hands on my wife." Jonah looked down, swallowing thickly. I shook my head. "Tell me, Jonah, when did it start?" He hesitated. "Wrong move." I let out another laugh, shaking my head. "You don't even have the balls to tell me the truth, do you?" "It wasn't supposed to be like this," he muttered. I don't remember unlocking my car door. I don't remember getting in. All I remember is gripping the steering wheel so hard that my knuckles turned white, my breathing shallow, uneven, my heart hammering against my ribs like a caged animal. I was supposed to come home to my wife. I was supposed to surprise her. Instead, I had walked into a celebration for another man's child. I clenched my jaw as my vision blurred for a moment, but I refused to let the tears fall. Not here, not now. I turned the key in the ignition, the engine roaring to life. My hands were still shaking, my entire body stiff with the weight of betrayal, but I didn't care. I needed to get the hell away from this place, from them, from the house I had built, the house I had paid for, the house that had become a stage for the greatest humiliation of my life. As I pulled away from the curb, I caught a glimpse of them through my rearview mirror. Sophia standing frozen in the driveway. Jonah looking lost, confused, terrified. My mother whispering furiously to my father. Marissa still holding the banner like some kind of twisted joke. I swallowed the bitter taste in my mouth and floored the gas pedal. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't be there. I drove aimlessly, my mind replaying every moment of the past few months. The late-night calls, the "I miss you" messages, the lies. Had she been with him when she texted me those things? Had she laughed with him, whispered to him in the dark while I sat in some hotel room on the other side of the world, thinking I was making sacrifices for us? A humorless chuckle escaped me. God, I was a fool. I gritted my teeth, gripping the wheel tighter. The anger in my chest burned like acid, searing through every rational thought I had left. I should have seen it coming. The signs had been there, small, almost imperceptible shifts in her behavior. The way she started hesitating before answering my calls, the way she sometimes took a second too long to respond to my messages, the way she no longer sounded lonely when I told her I missed her. And Jonah, my best friend, the man I trusted more than anyone. I had known him for years. He had been the first person I called when I got the job offer overseas. He had been the one telling me how proud he was, how he'd look after Sophia while I was gone. How stupid could I have been? I pressed the gas pedal harder. The city lights blurred past me. I needed somewhere to think, somewhere to breathe. I ended up at a cheap roadside motel, the neon sign flickering like a dying heartbeat. It wasn't home, but at least it was far away from that house. The receptionist barely glanced at me as I slid my card across the counter. She handed me the key, and I took the stairs two at a time, desperate to be alone. The second the door shut behind me, the weight of everything finally crashed down on me. I barely made it to the bed before I collapsed onto it, and that's when I finally broke. I pressed my palms into my face as a sound tore from my throat. Something raw, something ugly. I wasn't crying, not in the way most people cry. No, this was different. This was years of sacrifice, trust, and love collapsing in on itself. This was grief, not for a person, but for a life that never really existed. My chest heaved as I lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to wrap my head around the fact that my marriage was over, that everything I thought I was building was gone, that I had been reduced to nothing more than an afterthought in my own home. I rolled onto my side, my hand clenching into a fist. No, I wouldn't let them have the satisfaction of breaking me. I wouldn't let them win. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I had been hit by a truck. My body ached from tension, my eyes burned from exhaustion, but my mind was clear, and I knew exactly what I had to do. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number, my lawyer. I hit dial. "Noah?" came the groggy voice on the other end. "It's early. What's up?" "I want to start the process today," I said firmly. There was a pause. "The divorce?" "Divorce, property division, everything." He let out a low whistle. "Damn, that bad?" I exhaled sharply, running a hand over my jaw. Worse. A rustling sound, paper shifting. "All right, we'll file first thing Monday. I assume you want this handled aggressively?" I smiled grimly. "Oh, I want it handled so aggressively that Jonah will wish he never met her." The first text came that afternoon. "Sophia. Noah, please talk to me. I know you're hurt, but we need to discuss this." I didn't respond. The next one came an hour later. "Jonah, man, I know you're mad. I get it, but can we at least have a conversation?" I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then I locked my phone and tossed it onto the bed. I wasn't playing their game. Let them squirm. The following day, I had coffee at a small cafe near the motel. The world outside kept turning as if my life hadn't just been ripped apart. People laughed, couples held hands, parents fed their kids. Life moved on, and I would too. I took a slow sip of my coffee, feeling the beginnings of something foreign creeping into my chest. Relief. For the first time in years, I wasn't obligated to hold everything together. I wasn't breaking my back trying to make someone else happy. I was free, and that thought, it was the first thing that made me truly smile. That night, I finally sent a response to Jonah. 2 words, talk to my lawyer. And with that, I turned off my phone. No more explanations, no more chances, no more, "Noah, please." I had given them everything, and now I was taking everything back. 5. The legal battle begins. The weight of everything didn't hit me all at once. It came in waves, some small, barely noticeable, others so overwhelming that I could barely breathe. But amidst all of it, one thing remained clear. I was done. The betrayal had already happened. The damage was already done. Now it was about taking back control. I spent the next morning sitting in my motel room, staring at my phone, waiting for my lawyer to call. At exactly 9 a.m., my phone buzzed. "Noah, we're good to go." I leaned back against the headboard, gripping the phone tighter. "Walk me through it." "We're filing today. The house is in your name, and all financial contributions are documented under you. Jonah has no legal claim to it." I exhaled slowly. "And Sophia?" "She'll have the right to contest, but given the circumstances, it won't hold up. We're filing for an uncontested divorce, and with the financial records we have, she won't be able to touch a dime of your money. If she fights it, we can take it to court, but honestly, she won't win." I let that sink in. My entire marriage reduced to legal terms and financial evidence. It was ironic, really. I had built everything for us, for a future, and now the only thing that mattered was how fast I could dismantle it. "What about my accounts?" I asked. "Already in motion. We're securing your assets and freezing joint ones." A bitter smile tugged at my lips. Jonah thought he had won, that he had taken something from me, but he had no idea what was coming. The first signs of panic. The messages started flooding in that afternoon. First, Sophia. "Noah, I know you're angry, but can we talk? I didn't want this to happen this way." I ignored it. An hour later, another one. "Please, just one conversation. You don't have to do this." "Don't have to do this?" She was acting as if she hadn't ripped our marriage apart, as if I was the one choosing to end things rather than reacting to the mess she had created. Then came Jonah. "Man, I messed up. I get it, but let's not go nuclear, all right? We can figure this out." Figure this out? The audacity. He had already figured it out when he decided to betray me, when he stood in my house, at my wife's side, preparing for a child that wasn't mine. I locked my phone. I wasn't playing their game. By the next morning, Sophia must have gotten the first set of documents, because the next time she texted, it was different. "You filed for divorce?" I didn't answer. "Noah, please, let's talk before this goes too far." I stared at the message, waiting for the familiar ache, the instinct to fix things, but it never came. Instead, I texted my lawyer. "Make sure she understands Jonah gets nothing." His response was almost immediate. "Trust me, she'll understand soon." I was sitting in a cafe when my phone started ringing. I glanced down. Sophia. For a moment, I considered answering. Maybe there was a part of me that wanted to hear her beg, to hear her try and justify the unjustifiable. Then I hit decline. 10 seconds later, another call. This time, Marissa. I let it ring out. A minute later, a message. "Noah, I raised my daughter better than this, and I won't justify her actions, but don't you think you're being a little extreme?" Extreme? I closed my eyes, shaking my head. That was exactly the problem. They didn't think I was serious. They thought I was just reacting, that eventually I'd forgive and everything would return to normal. They thought wrong. 2 days later, my lawyer sent me an update. Jonah had been served. That same night, a message popped up. "Man, come on, this is insane. You're freezing me out of the house?" I smirked. "Yes." He called. I let it go to voicemail. Then another text. "Where am I supposed to go?" I stared at the screen. A dark satisfaction curled inside me. Not my problem. By the end of the week, everything had begun to unravel for them. Sophia wasn't just losing a husband, she was losing financial stability. Jonah wasn't just losing his best friend. He was losing the free ride he'd been enjoying for years. And I was finally taking back everything they thought they could steal. I had spent months thinking I was making sacrifices for my family. I had spent years believing I was building something solid. But I was wrong, because in the end, I wasn't the one making the sacrifices. I was the one being sacrificed. And now it was their turn to lose. For the first time in years, I felt something unfamiliar bloom in my chest. Freedom. And I wasn't about to waste it. I knew the moment Jonah's life started to fall apart because the messages stopped being demanding and started sounding desperate. At first, he had tried to reason with me, tried to talk his way out of this like he always had, thinking I'd eventually calm down and everything would go back to normal. But nothing about this was normal, because I wasn't giving him that option. By the time the reality of the legal situation settled in, Jonah was out of tricks. His first real panic message came late at night. "Noah, man, can we talk? Please, just 5 minutes." I didn't reply. He tried again the next day. "Look, I get it. You're angry. You have every right to be, but you're freezing me out of everything. I don't even have a place to stay." I read the message, took a sip of my coffee, and set my phone back down. He had a place to stay. Marissa's couch. It wasn't my problem. Word spread fast. I knew it was only a matter of time before people started realizing that Jonah, who had once strutted around with confidence, always acting like he had life figured out, was suddenly in serious trouble. Some mutual friends tried reaching out to me. "Dude, are you sure you want to do this? He's crashing with Sophia's mom. That's got to be humiliating." I smirked. "Good." Eli hesitated before responding. "Man, you're really not going to let this go, huh?" "Let it go?" I leaned back in my chair, staring at the message. They acted like this was a petty argument, like Jonah had borrowed my car without asking, instead of destroying my entire life. Would you let it go if your best friend screwed your wife and then threw a baby shower for their kid in your house? He didn't respond after that. Exactly. The moment I cut off access to the house and joint finances, Jonah must have thought he could just figure something out. Except he never had to figure things out before, because I was always the responsible one. Jonah was the guy who floated through life, always landing on his feet because someone else, me, usually, was there to catch him. But now I had pulled the safety net, and he was free falling. My lawyer confirmed that the mortgage had been entirely covered by me, which meant that Jonah had no legal right to the house. And since he had no job, no income, and no real way to contribute financially, he was left scrambling, which led to the next inevitable breakdown. I was grabbing lunch at a cafe near my motel when I felt a presence hover near my table. I looked up. Jonah. He looked rough. His eyes were shadowed with exhaustion, his hair a mess, his usual confident posture replaced with slumped shoulders. He looked like a man who had lost everything, and he had. "Noah," he said, voice lower than I'd ever heard it. "Can I sit?" I sipped my coffee slowly, letting him stew for a second before I gestured at the chair across from me. He sank into it, rubbing his hands together like he was trying to warm them up. He hesitated, swallowing hard. "I know I messed up." I said nothing. He shifted in his seat, uncomfortable with my silence. "Man, you got to believe me. I never wanted this to happen." I tilted my head slightly. "You mean you never wanted me to find out?" His lips pressed into a thin line. I let out a humorless chuckle. "Tell me something, Jonah. What exactly were you planning? Were you just going to let me keep paying for everything while you played house with my wife?" His gaze dropped to the table. I leaned in slightly. "You thought I'd be the fool forever, didn't you?" He exhaled sharply. "I didn't think—" "No, you didn't," I cut him off. "You didn't think about me. You didn't think about the consequences. You thought you could take everything and not pay the price." His jaw clenched. "Noah, please," he finally said. I don't have anywhere else to go." I stared at him. Jonah, the man who had stood in my house rubbing my wife's stomach while talking about their baby, was now sitting in front of me begging. For a second, I just watched him. Then I took a slow sip of my coffee, savoring the taste, and set the cup down. "That's not my problem," I said. His eyes snapped up to mine. His panic was real now. "Noah!" I cut him off again. "I have nothing left to say to you, Jonah. Whatever sympathy you think I have..." I leaned back in my chair. "It doesn't exist." He swallowed hard, desperation flickering across his face. "You don't have to do this." I smiled. "Oh, but I do." I pushed my chair back, tossing a few bills on the table, and stood up. Jonah blinked up at me. "That's it?" I nodded. "That's it." Then I turned and walked out, and I didn't look back. Days passed. Then came the eviction notice. Jonah hadn't been able to keep up with the mounting costs. He had no real job, no way to sustain the house without me. And just like that, the place that had been my prison became his downfall. I showed up the day they were forcing him out. Boxes were scattered on the front lawn. Sophia stood to the side, clutching her belly, looking pale and exhausted. And Jonah? Jonah was arguing with the officer handling the eviction. "You don't understand," he snapped. "I live here." The officer shook his head. "Not anymore." Jonah's head whipped around at the sound of my footsteps. The moment he saw me, his expression twisted into pure hate. "You did this," he snarled. I shrugged. "No, Jonah. You did this." His hands clenched into fists. "You just want to see me suffer, don't you?" I smiled slightly, meeting his gaze. "Yes." He let out a low, frustrated sound, running his hands through his hair. "Where the hell am I supposed to go?" I glanced at Sophia. "Maybe your baby mama has a solution." She flinched. Jonah turned to her, waiting for an answer. She said nothing. Jonah's face crumpled. Even she wasn't going to save him. The officer stepped forward. "You need to leave the property now." Jonah turned back to me, his expression shifting from rage to something I hadn't seen before, fear. "Noah," he tried again, voice quieter now. "Man, please." I didn't say a word. I just watched as the reality set in. Jonah, the man who had stolen everything from me, was now left with nothing. And it was his turn to walk away. He grabbed a box, his shoulders slumped, and started down the street. And for the first time since this all began, I finally felt free. Jonah didn't bounce back. I knew that because despite cutting off all communication, words still reached me. Friends, real ones, kept me updated, sometimes out of concern, sometimes because they just wanted to see how I'd react. Each new piece of information was a reminder that karma had finally caught up with him, and I enjoyed every second of it. Jonah had been staying at Marissa's house, which was barely an upgrade from sleeping in his car. I heard he tried getting a job. Failed. He tried couch hopping, burned too many bridges. Even people who had once liked him, who had supported him, started pulling away. Why? Because no one respects a man who destroys his best friend's life and still ends up with nothing. It was poetic justice, really. Sophia wasn't faring much better. Without me, she had to rely entirely on Jonah, who had already proven himself to be useless. It didn't take long before cracks started forming, because what happens when you take away the comfort, the stability, the security? People show their true colors. And Sophia? She finally saw Jonah for what he really was, a leech. Which is why, a few months later, I got a text from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. I left him. I stared at the message for a long moment, feeling an unfamiliar sensation. Not regret, not sadness, satisfaction. Because I already knew who it was from, Sophia. I later found out through a friend that Sophia had dumped Jonah. And not just dumped him, she wanted alimony. I nearly choked on my drink when I heard. "You're kidding," I said, shaking my head. My friend grinned. "Dead serious? She claims he promised to take care of her, and now that she's pregnant, she needs financial support." I let out a sharp laugh. Jonah, who had betrayed me for this woman, was now getting played in the exact same way. The irony was delicious. And the best part? Jonah didn't have a damn penny to his name. He had thrown away everything. His friendship, his reputation, his financial stability, all for a woman who was now taking him for whatever little he had left. It was the perfect ending, or so I thought. One night, I found myself at a bar. It wasn't the kind of place I used to go. It was quiet, low-lit, barely crowded. Just the kind of place where I could drink in peace without worrying about running into ghosts from my past. But fate had a twisted sense of humor, because just as I was finishing my drink, I felt someone watching me. I turned. Jonah. He looked wrecked. Gaunt face, dark circles under his eyes, shoulders slumped like he was carrying the weight of the world. He looked like a man who had lost everything, because he had. I didn't say anything. I just lifted my glass and took another slow sip. He took it as an invitation. He sat 2 seats away from me, gripping a cheap beer like it was his last lifeline. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then finally, he let out a low, broken laugh. "You happy now?" I set my glass down and tilted my head. "Very." He scoffed, shaking his head. "Figures." I waited. I knew he had more to say, and I was curious. Not because I cared, but because I wanted to hear it from his own mouth. The admission that he had lost. And sure enough, after a long pause, he finally sighed and muttered, "She left me." I exhaled through my nose, amused. "Yeah, I heard." Jonah let out another humorless laugh. "Of course you did." I leaned back slightly. "So, how's it feel?" His fingers tightened around his beer. "Like," I smirked. "Good." He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. "I never thought she'd do that to me." I raised a brow. "Oh, really? You thought she was different?" Jonah hesitated. I leaned forward slightly, my voice calm but cutting. "Tell me, Jonah, how did your great love fall apart so quickly?" He opened his mouth, then shut it. Because he already knew the answer. Because I already knew the answer. Because Sophia only wanted him when he was convenient, when he had something to offer, when he was stealing someone else's stability. But the moment he became a liability, she threw him away, just like he did to me. And now he was drowning. "Noah," he finally said, his voice quiet. I held up a hand. "Don't." He swallowed hard. "Man, No." He blinked. I shook my head. "Whatever you were about to say, save it. I don't want your apology. I don't need your regret. And I sure as hell don't want to hear your excuses." His jaw clenched. I smirked. "Look on the bright side," I said. "You and Sophia got what you wanted. You don't have to feel guilty anymore." Jonah let out a sharp breath. "That's not funny." I shrugged. "It kind of is." He stared at his drink, eyes unfocused. "I lost everything, man." I lifted my glass in a mock toast. "Cheers to that." He looked at me then, his expression raw, broken. And for the first time, I saw it. True regret. Not just because of where he was now, but because of where he could have been. Because if he hadn't thrown it all away, if he hadn't betrayed me, his life would still be comfortable. But he had made his choice. And now he had to live with it. I finished my drink and set the empty glass down. Then, without another word, I stood up and walked out. I never looked back. Because Jonah was nothing more than a lesson learned. And I was finally free. Jonah tried to contest his own divorce. Failed. Sophia drained him for everything he had left, which wasn't much. And me? I moved on. I cut ties with everyone who had betrayed me. I bought a new place, one that had no memories, no ghosts, no reminders of a life that had once felt real. And the final, sweetest justice? Months later, Jonah tried to reach out again. One last, desperate attempt. He sent a message. "Noah, I need help." I stared at the text for a long moment. Then I deleted it without answering. Because Jonah was dead to me. And I had never felt more alive. There's a moment after every storm where everything feels too quiet, like the world is holding its breath, waiting to see what comes next. That's what life felt like in the months after I burned everything to the ground. For the first time in years, I had no obligations, no wife to worry about, no best friend to look out for, no family breathing down my neck telling me to forgive. It was just me. And I was finally free. I distanced myself from everyone connected to my past, the so-called friends who had known about the affair and said nothing. The family members who had tried to guilt me into staying married, like I owed Sophia something. Even my own mother, who had bought a damn gift for Jonah and Sophia's child. I was done with all of them. The only people I kept in my life were the ones who had stood by me, the ones who had called out the betrayal before I even saw it coming. And honestly, my circle was a hell of a lot smaller now, but that was fine, because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't surrounded by snakes. I sold the house, not out of necessity. Financially, I was fine, but I didn't want to live in the same walls where my marriage had died. I bought a new apartment, sleek and modern with a view of the city skyline. No memories, no ghosts. I furnished it the way I wanted. No more debating over paint colors, no more compromising on furniture Sophia liked. It was my space, and it felt right. For the first time in years, I could breathe. I should have known it wasn't over, because people like Sophia, they don't just let go. Her first desperate attempt came through a message. "Noah, I know I hurt you, but can we at least talk? Just once." I didn't respond. She tried again. "I miss you. Please, just one conversation." Miss me? She had spent months sneaking around with Jonah. She had thrown away our marriage for him. And now that her perfect life had crumbled, she wanted to come crawling back? Pathetic. She must have finally realized I wasn't taking the bait, because the next message? It was a voice note. I debated whether to play it. Then, out of sheer morbid curiosity, I hit play. Her voice came through, shaky and tired. "Noah, I know you hate me, and I deserve that. But I need you to know that I never stopped loving you. What happened with Jonah? It wasn't supposed to be that way. I don't know what I was thinking. I was lonely, and I made a mistake. I ruined everything, and I regret it every day. I just need you to know that." I let the message finish. Then I deleted it. I wasn't her backup plan. She had made her choice, and now she had to live with it. I should have expected Jonah to reach out again. Men like him, they never truly learn. The message came late at night. "Noah, I need help." That was it. No fake apologies, no excuses, just desperation. I didn't respond. The next night, another one. "Man, I've got nothing left. I don't know what to do." I stared at the message, tapping my fingers against the counter. For a moment, just a second, I imagined what he must look like now. Probably living off whatever scraps he could find. Probably realizing that life without me covering for him was a nightmare. And honestly, good. I had spent years being the safety net for both him and Sophia. Now they could figure it out themselves. I deleted the message without responding. Jonah was dead to me. It wasn't enough that Jonah was ruined. It wasn't enough that Sophia had lost everything. No, the final nail in the coffin came when Jonah tried to appeal the divorce ruling. The idiot actually went to court trying to get money out of Sophia. And the judge? The judge laughed in his face. He walked out of that courtroom with nothing. No money, no house, no reputation. Just regret. And for the first time in months, I slept like a baby. Months later, I was sitting in a cafe, sipping my coffee, when I saw them. Sophia and Jonah. Not together. They weren't a couple anymore, but they were both broken. Jonah was thinner than before, looking exhausted, drained, aged, like life had kicked him down and he had stayed there. Sophia, she was pushing a stroller, looking miserable. And me, I was fine. I finished my coffee, left a tip, and walked past them. For a brief moment, Sophia's eyes met mine, and in them I saw everything: regret, shame, a silent plea for something, anything. I held her gaze for a second. Then, slowly, deliberately, I smirked and kept walking. Jonah and Sophia became irrelevant. People stopped talking about them. The scandal faded. But me? I thrived. I traveled. I met new people. I lived. And best of all, I never wasted another second on traitors. Because in the end, justice had been served and I was finally completely free.